The crimson flames, tinged with black embers, spread out in a circular wave, consuming everything in their path. Boulders crumbled into dust, and even the ground was left without a trace of debris, as if all remnants had been erased from existence. The chaotic battlefield around them instantly fell into a suffocating silence. Every gaze froze in place, and the once deafening noise vanished, replaced by an eerie stillness. Nirvana demon flame. Nirvana tribulation. Eyes, once wide with shock, slowly shifted, locking onto the young man in the center of it all, his head slightly bowed. Terror gripped them all. Those who made it here were not weak. They had each experienced the Nirvana stage, a test all Nirvana cultivators must face, the Nirvana tribulation. They were intimately familiar with its ominous energy. Under normal circumstances, such a surge wouldn't cause much alarm. Everyone here had lived through their own tribulation. But this was different. Because the one undergoing the tribulation wasn't calmly sitting in meditation, but fighting against a powerful opponent at the 5th Nirvana stage. Undergoing a tribulation in the midst of battle? The thought alone sent a wave of absurdity through their minds. The Nirvana tribulation was a nightmare for every cultivator. When it struck, who wouldn't immediately find a secluded spot or seek out trusted allies to protect them? No one would dare face it without careful preparation. In fact, more than 70% of Nirvana stage cultivators didn't perish at the hands of their enemies, but during the tribulation itself. Such was the terrifying power of the Nirvana tribulation. Yet now, they were witnessing someone dare to face it head-on in battle. The shock hit them like a hurricane. Every onlooker stood speechless, too stunned to speak. This guy, Lu Bai and his companions, momentarily slowing their attacks due to the disturbance, finally understood why Lin Dong had been on the defensive against Song Zhen's relentless assault. Most of his strength was focused inward, combating the tribulation inside him. Madness. That was the only word they could use to describe Lin Dong's actions. If Song Zhen's attacks had broken through his defenses and disrupted the balance, Lin Dong would have lost control and perished, no question about it. Mu Hongling's beautiful eyes fixed on the young man in the distance. She bit her lip. This guy always had a way of creating miracles. While Lu Bai and the others were filled with shock and amazement, the expressions of Blood Shadow and his group darkened. Deep within their eyes, fear flickered. They had been thoroughly rattled by Lin Dong's audacious act. That reckless brat. Little Mink clicked his tongue, though inwardly, he let out a sigh of relief. Initially, he hadn't paid much attention to Lin Dong's actions. After all, they had been through so much together, and Little Mink knew Lin Dong's cautious nature all too well. The guy always had a few tricks up his sleeve, sometimes even ones that surprised Little Mink himself. I told you not to celebrate too early. It seems you didn't take that to heart. Little Mink's teasing gaze fell upon Song Ke, whose face had grown increasingly dark. He grinned mischievously. Humph, what's there to be so smug about? Even if that brat survives the tribulation, he'll only be at the 4th Nirvana stage. Song Ke sneered. Little Mink smirked but didn't bother arguing further. With a flick of his palm, a surge of energy roared to life, transforming into a fierce attack that swept towards Song Ke once more. Song Ke didn't dare slack off. He quickly summoned his primordial energy to counter the attack. After their earlier exchanges, he knew all too well how dangerous Little Mink was. Even with all his strength, he could barely maintain the upper hand. If he relaxed for even a moment, he would surely face defeat. Lin Dong's side, however, was now surging with renewed morale. As long as the most troublesome of the 3 demons of the Song clan was held in check, they had a fighting chance. What had seemed like a dire situation for Lin Dong was suddenly shifting dramatically in their favor. Damn him! Amidst the countless watching eyes, Song Zhen's face twisted into a grim expression. The smile that had once graced his face was now fading, replaced by a sinister glare directed at Lin Dong. The shock he felt was no less than that of the others, but alongside the shock was a seething rage. He couldn't believe that Lin Dong had dared to divert his attention to undergo the tribulation while fighting him. Even he wouldn't have the guts to attempt such a thing. But now, Lin Dong had done it. I can't let him survive this tribulation. A chilling glint flashed in Song Zhen's eyes. He leaped forward, primordial energy surging as he formed a massive claw, imbued with a strange power, and swiped viciously at Lin Dong. "You're too late." Lin Dong slowly lifted his head, a cold smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. His hand stretched out, and a pillar of black flames shot forth, shattering the massive claw in an instant. Whoosh! As the pillar of black flames erupted from his body, a terrifying surge of primordial energy exploded from within him, causing even the air around him to tremble with intensity. His aura grew exponentially stronger. He succeeded in overcoming the tribulation? So quickly. Song Zhen's face turned pale. He simply couldn't believe that Lin Dong had managed to survive the fourth Nirvana tribulation in such a short time. Lin Dong was a complete mystery to Song Zhen. He had no idea how powerful Lin Dong's body had become after cultivating this sky-transforming dragon art. Though the fourth Nirvana tribulation was indeed fierce, it posed no fatal threat to Lin Dong. Relying on his extraordinary willpower and formidable body, Lin Dong successfully endured the Nirvana tribulation in an impressively short time. As he felt the surge of immense primordial energy within him, the sheer power was several times stronger than before. Thanks to this bold risk, Lin Dong had managed to close the gap between them significantly. "You're right. A third Nirvana stage cultivator might not be able to kill you, but as for me, I can now." Lin Dong raised his head, smiling at the now pale-faced Song Zhen. Stretching lazily, his smile carried a sharpness like a hidden blade, gleaming coldly. During their initial exchange, Lin Dong had already noticed the enormous gap between the third and fifth Nirvana stages. Even though he could bridge some of that gap using various techniques, achieving victory would still be extremely difficult. And that kind of hard-won victory was not something Lin Dong was willing to accept. Thus, after a quick assessment, he decided to take the risk of crossing the tribulation. As long as he could reach the fourth Nirvana stage, Song Zhen's advantage would rapidly diminish. With the power of the fourth Nirvana stage, Lin Dong had confidence that he could completely defeat him. "You arrogant brat. Even if you've reached the fourth Nirvana stage, the gap between us is still immeasurable. Do you think I'm like the trash you've encountered before?" Song Zhen's eyes were filled with malice as he sneered coldly. Lin Dong smiled, raising his hand and making a small beckoning gesture towards Song Zhen. An unmistakable provocation. "You're asking for death." Infuriated, Song Zhen let out a laugh filled with rage. Brilliant golden light erupted from his body, and with a heavy stomp, the ground trembled. From beneath the earth, a dozen earthen dragons imbued with violent primordial energy tore through the ground, converging in a devastating assault aimed directly at Lin Dong. Watching the ferocious earthen dragons surge toward him, Lin Dong merely smiled. A flash of cold light appeared in his eyes as he flipped his hand. A black iron seal expanded rapidly, casting a massive shadow. With a thunderous crash, it obliterated the earthen dragons one by one, crushing them into oblivion. Boom! The earth scattered in all directions, dust filled the air, but quickly dissipated. The colossal iron seal floated slowly, and from its shadow emerged Lin Dong's figure. This time, facing Song Zhen's onslaught, Lin Dong showed no sign of retreat. He forcefully suppressed the attack with sheer brute strength. It was clear to anyone watching that the tide of the battle was beginning to turn. The previous one-sided domination was now being steadily dismantled. Standing tall on the iron seal, Lin Dong's gaze locked onto Song Zhen in the distance. In his eyes, a cold, murderous intent began to seep out. Whoosh! Violent primordial energy swirled around Lin Dong as he clenched his hand. The sky crocodile bone spear materialized in his grip, the spear vibrating as he pointed it at Song Zhen. The surrounding primordial energy wrapped around the bone spear, its brilliance intensifying. "Now, shall we have some real fun?" High on a boulder, Lan Ning watched as Lin Dong's aura skyrocketed, a small smile forming at the corner of her lips. She glanced at Qing Feng beside her. "Now do you believe me? Lin Dong isn't someone to be underestimated." Qing Feng nodded slowly, his expression heavy with realization. He murmured softly, "Indeed, he's no ordinary man. The tide of this battle is about to shift." Still, Song Zhen isn't a pushover either. The outcome remains uncertain. The overwhelming primordial energy swirling around the bone spear caused it to tremble, emitting a strange, humming resonance that made the air vibrate. From Lin Dong's gradually frosty expression, anyone could tell that after being at a disadvantage earlier, he was about to unleash his full strength. But in front of Lin Dong, Song Zhen's face had turned terrifyingly dark. When he saw Lin Dong undergo the Nirvana tribulation right under his nose, he felt utterly humiliated, as if he had been played for a fool. Ever since entering the ancient battlefield, Song Zhen had been progressing smoothly, gaining the inheritance of the Taotie sect without a hitch, further boosting his already immense power. In his mind, only the leaders of the top 3 dynasties from the 10 super dynasties could possibly challenge him. Lin Dong wasn't even on his radar. Yet, this nobody, someone he hadn't even considered, had humiliated him in front of so many people. If I don't tear you to pieces today, how can I ever show my face again? A savage expression twisted Song Zhen's face as an overwhelming wave of black light erupted from his body. The black light was sinister, pulsating with a strange power that spread out like a living entity. That aura bore a disturbing resemblance to the devouring power of the devouring Ancestral Talisman, but it was far more cold and vicious. The black light condensed in Song Zhen's hand, eventually forming into a massive black trident. On the trident, an eerie symbol appeared, an indistinct image of a colossal beast roaring toward the heavens. Its gaping maw was especially striking, as if it could swallow the very heavens themselves. As soon as the trident took shape, an ancient, faint roar echoed through the air. The symbol on the trident seemed to come alive, its mouth constantly wriggling as it devoured the surrounding primordial energy. Lin Dong, let me show you what it means to possess the inheritance of the Taotie sect. Song Zhen's voice was low and menacing, his eyes filled with murderous intent. In an instant, his figure blurred, leaving behind only a shadow. In the next moment, he appeared in front of Lin Dong, his trident enveloped in boundless black light, sweeping toward Lin Dong like a deathly curtain. Swoosh! The overwhelming black light reflected in Lin Dong's pupils. Faced with Song Zhen's ferocious attack, Lin Dong didn't retreat. His eyes turned icy as he violently shook the bone spear in his hand. A chilling, ancient roar echoed from the spear, and with a sudden jolt, a cold gleam split the air. At the tip of the spear, a dazzling spear flower bloomed, radiating a lethal killing intent. The spear flower blossomed like a lotus, its beauty hiding a deadly edge as it tore through the void. With a sharp clang, the spear collided violently with the incoming trident. Clang! The crisp sound echoed as sparks exploded in the air. Even the invisible air rippled outward in waves, spreading rapidly in all directions. Whoosh! 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 The terrifying force surged through the battlefield. Lin Dong's expression remained unchanged as he shook the bone spear. The spear flower suddenly burst apart, its petals scattering like razor-sharp daggers, swiftly enveloping Song Zhen's vital points. The sudden change took even Song Zhen by surprise. By the time he reacted, the icy killing intent was already upon him. Humph! Though caught off guard, Song Zhen didn't panic. Instead, he sneered with derision. The black light on his chest swirled ominously, and suddenly, a massive black mouth formed on his chest. The mouth unleashed a terrifying suction force, swallowing the deadly spear petals in an instant. The Taotie fiend beast devours all things under the heavens. Your attack may be formidable, but it's useless against me. Ha ha ha. Song Zhen burst into laughter, his eyes turning cold as he thrust the trident toward Lin Dong once again. Power of swallowing? Lin Dong twirled the bone spear, fending off Song Zhen's strikes while his gaze grew sharp. It was said that the Taotie fiend beast possessed a terrifying power of devouring, capable of swallowing anything in the world. In many ways, this power was similar to that of the devouring Ancestral Talisman. The power of swallowing, however, could only devour energy without being able to assimilate it for one's own use. In this respect, it was inferior to the devouring power. Of course, this was no surprise, as the devouring power came from the devouring Ancestral Talisman, one of the 8 ancestral talismans in existence. Although the Taotie Fiend Beast was a fearsome creature throughout the ages, it was still weaker than the devouring Ancestral Talisman. Haha, Lin Dong, as we fight, your power will continuously be devoured by the Taotie's force. The more we fight, the weaker you'll become. How will you stand against me? Song Zhen's trident emitted a dense black glow as he attacked Lin Dong. Each time it clashed with Lin Dong's bone spear, the devouring power would surge forth, consuming a portion of the primordial energy enveloping the spear. If things continued like this, Lin Dong's energy would indeed deplete, and he would gradually fall into a disadvantage. However, while that might be true under ordinary circumstances, Lin Dong was far from ordinary. Trying to employ the power of devouring in front of someone who wielded the true devouring power was, without a doubt, childish. Thus, when faced with Song Zhen's mocking words, Lin Dong's face instead showed a playful smile. Seeing that expression, Song Zhen's anger surged, and just as he was about to intensify his attack, his expression suddenly changed. He had sensed that the black energy surrounding his trident was mysteriously dissipating. Whoosh whoosh. As the energy on his trident disappeared, Lin Dong's attacks became increasingly ferocious, as if the energy that vanished from Song Zhen had transferred to Lin Dong instead. How is this possible? Song Zhen's expression drastically changed. He gritted his teeth and urgently activated the power of swallowing, trying to drain Lin Dong's energy. But the result of their next clash left his heart sinking. Lin Dong's primordial energy seemed to be wrapped in some invisible force, completely immune to his devouring attempts. What shocked him even more was that when his power of swallowing came into contact with Lin Dong's energy, not only did it fail to consume anything, but his own energy began to rapidly drain away. This guy is strange. Song Zhen cast a quick glance at the teasing smile on Lin Dong's face, and a chill ran down his spine. He had no idea what Lin Dong had done, but whatever it was unquestionably linked to this bizarre phenomenon. This brat must have inherited something from the Azure Dragon Hall, but there's no way the Azure Dragon Hall could contain such an unusual power. Damn it, what kind of trick is he using? Song Zhen's eyes flickered with uncertainty. After a moment of fruitless thought, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and retreat. Around the area of craggy rocks, the spectators watched Song Zhen retreat, and a low murmur of astonishment rippled through the crowd. The sight before them made it clear that Song Zhen was now avoiding Lin Dong's fierce attacks. Brat, don't get cocky too soon. As he retreated, Song Zhen's gaze grew increasingly vicious. Since direct confrontation wasn't working, he decided to crush Lin Dong with overwhelming force. A torrent of strange black light surged endlessly from Song Zhen's body. The black radiance spread, quickly enveloping half the sky. Its overwhelming presence was terrifying to behold. Song Zhen was enraged. Witnessing this spectacle, everyone knew that Song Zhen had truly been provoked by Lin Dong. Roar! The black light frantically surged and twisted around Song Zhen's body. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, it gradually formed into the shape of an enormous ancient beast, as dark as ink. The beast's figure was eerie, its entire body pitch black, with no discernible eyes or nose, only a massive gaping mouth that stood out strikingly. As soon as this ancient beast appeared, a horrifying suction force emanated from its enormous maw, causing a violent gust of wind. Streams of primordial energy from the surrounding world were sucked into the beast's mouth. What is that? The crowd's eyes were wide with shock as they stared at the strange black beast. Around the craggy rocks, there was a collective intake of breath. Taotie Spirit, the black beast, with its overwhelming ferocity, materialized in the sky, radiating wave after wave of black energy. This caused the primordial energy in the air to tremble violently. Taotie Spirit. Countless gazes filled with fear fixed on the black beast in the sky. Its enormous, black hole-like maw was especially captivating. It was said that this maw could devour all things under heaven, and whatever entered it would be eternally consumed by darkness. Many had only heard tales of this infamous ancient beast, but few had ever seen it with their own eyes. So, when Song Zhen summoned the Taotie Fiend Spirit, a wave of shock rippled through the spectators. From the Taotie Fiend Spirit, they could feel an immense and terrifying power. Whoosh! Song Zhen's figure appeared atop the gigantic head of the Taotie Fiend Spirit. His cold, sinister gaze locked onto Lin Dong below. The Taotie Fiend Spirit he had summoned was not just a mere illusion. It carried a trace of the real Taotie's aura. Although that aura had weakened over time, Song Zhen believed that it would be more than enough to deal with Lin Dong. "Brat, I'll show you what true despair feels like." Song Zhen sneered viciously as his eyes grew even colder. His hands flashed through a series of hand seals, and from the dark figure of the Taotie Fiend Spirit, 2 crimson beams of light shot out, locking onto Lin Dong's body. As the 2 crimson beams locked onto Lin Dong, his expression shifted slightly. He could feel the surrounding primordial energy beginning to dissipate. The Taotie Fiend Spirit was actually devouring the energy around him. Even if Lin Dong could still perform martial techniques, their power would be significantly weakened due to the lack of surrounding energy. So it has some merit after all. Lin Dong muttered to himself. It was no surprise that the Taotie sect was considered the leader among the 4 major demon sects. The power of devouring was truly overbearing. If it were anyone else, they would surely be at a severe disadvantage in such an environment, finding themselves severely restricted during the battle. Roar! The Taotie Fiend Spirit let out a sky-shaking roar, and black waves rippled out from its gaping maw, surging wildly. The suction force intensified, and massive boulders and ancient trees were uprooted and pulled into the beast's mouth, vanishing without a trace. The spectators watching from a distance were horrified by this indiscriminate attack, and many hastily retreated, terrified of being swallowed by the Taotie Fiend Spirit. On one of the large boulders, Lan Ying and Qing Feng both stared at the enormous Taotie Fiend Spirit with heavy expressions. Even from its massive body, they could feel an aura of danger. Boom! The Taotie Fiend Spirit's huge body suddenly lunged forward, causing the ground to tremble. In the next instant, it transformed into a massive black beam of light, descending from the sky and enveloping a space several dozen feet around Lin Dong. The black beam twisted and writhed, eventually transforming into an enormous mouth that resembled a black hole, vast and unfathomable, striking terror into anyone who looked upon it. Taotie Fiend Spirit, heaven-devouring maw. Song Zhen roared toward the sky, his face contorted with a sinister grin as he looked at the now-trapped Lin Dong, his eyes gleaming with cruelty. Lin Dong, once you've been swallowed by the Taotie Fiend Spirit, you'll be trapped forever in that dark stomach. There, you'll understand the meaning of a fate worse than death. The overwhelming pressure descended from the heavens, blanketing the space around Lin Dong. The force was so immense that all the rocks in the area were crushed into powder, and even the ground beneath was compressed by half a foot. Cracks spread like spider webs in all directions. Lin Dong's gaze became serious as he stared at the giant dark maw closing in on him, leaving him no escape route. Inside the maw, it felt as though a black hole lurked, filled with eerie, cold darkness. Whoosh whoosh. Lin Dong's bone spear shot out in a storm of spear shadows, raining down like a torrential downpour upon the giant dark mouth. However, the seemingly sharp spear shadows were swallowed the moment they made contact with the dark maw, unable to slow its advance in the slightest. It felt as if he were trying to stop a chariot with his bare hands. Seeing this, Lin Dong's eyes narrowed slightly. "Haha, such a naive fool," Song Zhen laughed heartily. At this moment, he seemed convinced of his victory. His heaven-devouring maw was powerful enough to trouble even someone at the 5th Nirvana stage. How could Lin Dong, with his 4th Nirvana stage strength, possibly resist? It's over. The dark maw descended, swallowing Lin Dong in an instant like a deluge of black ink. Under the horrified gazes of the onlookers, Lin Dong disappeared within the black maw. Sizzle! The black ink-like light spread across the area, and a massive pit silently appeared in the ground where Lin Dong had stood. Both Lin Dong and the surrounding earth had completely vanished. He was swallowed? Gazing at the black light and the deep pit left behind, many spectators sucked in a breath of cold air. Inside the black light, infused with the devouring power of the Taotie fiend spirit, it seemed that nothing could survive. Song Zhen's figure flashed as he appeared above the pit, sneering down at the writhing black mass. Nothing that entered the dark stomach could escape. Lin Dong would be completely digested, leaving not even a trace behind. The battle is over. Song Zhen stretched lazily, his expression returning to its earlier calm. With Lin Dong dead, the morale of the opposing forces would surely plummet. In the end, they would emerge victorious. Is Lin Dong really finished? Qing Feng asked in surprise as he stared at the writhing black mass. Lan frowned. She knew how terrifying the Taotie fiend spirit was, and its most fearsome ability was devouring. Once swallowed, nothing would ever come back out. Even though the spirit summoned by Song Zhen carried only a trace of the real Taotie's aura, its power was still incredibly dangerous. It should be, Lan hesitated, but as she spoke, her eyes suddenly widened in shock. Her gaze immediately shifted to the black light. Wait, is he not finished? Boom. At the same moment Lan Ying's eyes narrowed. The writhing black mass began to tremble violently. Ripples spread across its surface, as if some dramatic change was taking place inside. Song Zhen's expression shifted as well, the smile vanishing from his face, replaced by deep suspicion. He could hardly believe that Lin Dong could survive the terrifying devouring power of the Taotie fiend spirit. But no matter how hard it was to believe, the next scene made Song Zhen's face go pale. Sizzle, sizzle. The black mass writhed faster, and to Song Zhen's horror, it began to shrink rapidly, as if its energy were being forcibly drained by something. Seeing this, Song Zhen's face twitched. That black light was part of the inheritance he had received from the Taotie sect, allowing him to wield the Taotie fiend beast's devouring power. If it vanished like this, the blow to him would be devastating. Desperate, he tried to retract the black light. However, just as he attempted to act, his expression darkened even further. He realized that his connection to the black light had been completely severed. What's happening? A bead of cold sweat trickled down Song Zhen's forehead. This bizarre situation had completely blindsided him. Sizzle, sizzle. As Song Zhen stood there in shock, the black light continued to shrink until a figure emerged from within. The last of the black light gathered and was completely absorbed into that figure's hand. Lin Dong. Song Zhen stared at the figure emerging from the black light. His pupils shrank to pinpoints, and his voice trembled with a mix of shock, anger, and disbelief. Song Zhen could hardly believe his eyes. Lin Dong hadn't just survived the devouring power of the Taotie fiend beast, but had somehow absorbed it into his body. This realization sent chills running down Song Zhen's spine, his entire body breaking out in cold sweat. Under Song Zhen's shocked gaze, Lin Dong looked up at him and smiled faintly, revealing gleaming white teeth. That smile sent an even colder chill down Song Zhen's back, as if ice had gripped his heart. No doubt about it, the power of the Taotie fiend beast is quite satisfying, Lin Dong said casually. You, Song Zhen stammered in midair, staring dumbfounded at Lin Dong's radiant smile. His entire body was enveloped in an icy dread. His trembling hand pointed at Lin Dong, eyes wide with disbelief. You actually absorbed my devouring power? It took him a while to spit out a complete sentence, but his voice was laced with undisguised terror. He couldn't fathom it. The devouring power of the Taotie fiend beast, which was supposed to devour and digest anything, hadn't harmed Lin Dong at all. Instead, Lin Dong had somehow absorbed it. This turn of events was utterly absurd to Song Zhen. Hiss! The crowd around them gasped in disbelief, their eyes fixed on Lin Dong as though they were looking at a ghost. While the devouring power of the Taotie fiend beast is formidable, what you've obtained is nothing more than a fraction of its true strength. Subduing it isn't particularly difficult, Lin Dong said with a mocking smile. Now that you've lost the devouring power, I'd say the strength of your Taotie sect techniques has dropped by at least 30%. For Song Zhen, losing the devouring power was like losing an arm. If he had stuck to using his martial techniques, it would have taken Lin Dong quite a bit of effort to defeat him. But who would have thought that Song Zhen would flaunt his devouring power so blatantly, attempting to eliminate Lin Dong in one go. Had Lin Dong been a normal person, he might have fallen into the dark stomach and been digested into nothingness. But, possessing the devouring ancestral talisman, the Taotie fiend beast's devouring power was not as terrifying to Lin Dong as it was to others. So, when Lin Dong was engulfed by the dark stomach, he immediately activated the devouring ancestral talisman. The devouring power spread, and he absorbed not only the dark stomach, but also the devouring energy within it. In this clash between two unique powers, the devouring power clearly had the upper hand. As a result, Lin Dong not only neutralized Song Zhen's deadly move, but also caused him to lose his most powerful weapon, the devouring power. Damn you! Give me back my devouring power! Song Zhen's previously triumphant smile froze awkwardly on his face before it twisted into a snarl. His eyes filled with fury as he roared and shot forward, his body flashing through the air. Whoosh whoosh. Several afterimages flickered in midair as Song Zhen's trident cut through the air, generating a storm of black shadows that rained down on Lin Dong like a torrential downpour. Taotie Demon Trident. As the black shadows descended, they gathered together at an incredible speed, converging into a single, powerful black beam. The beam carried an overwhelming force and shot straight for Lin Dong's head. As the black energy surged, it seemed to carry with it ancient, ghostly howls. Faced with Song Zhen's frenzied attack, Lin Dong merely sneered. Without any intention of dodging, he gathered his primordial energy and thrust his bone spear forward. The spear moved without any flamboyant technique, but the dense primordial energy concentrated along its length radiated a terrifying destructive force. Clang! The bone spear collided heavily with the trident, producing a sharp, metallic ring. A violent shockwave rippled out, causing the air itself to tremble and create visible ripples. Without your devouring power, the techniques of the Taotie sect have become much weaker, Lin Dong said with a cold smile. He could sense that Song Zhen's attacks had lost a certain edge. Although they still seemed powerful, they no longer carried the overwhelming menace they once did. Song Zhen's face contorted with rage. His arm shook as he wildly swung the trident, unleashing a torrent of fierce energy toward Lin Dong. It was clear that the loss of the devouring power had driven him into a near-mad frenzy. However, despite Song Zhen's ferocious attacks, Lin Dong easily blocked each one. In fact, Song Zhen's assault became increasingly disordered and uncoordinated. Song Zhen has lost his composure, Lan Ning observed, her brows slightly furrowed. In a battle between powerful fighters, one's mindset was crucial. Wild, frantic attacks only opened up vulnerabilities, inviting the opponent to land a decisive blow. Right now, Song Zhen was teetering on the edge of such a mistake. Lin Dong's methods are truly strange. He even managed to neutralize the Taotie fiend beast's devouring power. Qing Feng remarked, his expression heavy with concern. Devouring power may be strong, but it's not invincible, Lan Ning said softly. There are countless mysterious powers in this world, and the devouring power Song Zhen possesses is merely a fraction of the real thing. It's not surprising it was countered. Still, Lin Dong's hidden abilities are quite formidable. After a brief pause, she added, especially considering he's only at the 4th Nirvana stage. What are Lin Dong's chances of winning now? Qing Feng asked. At the start, he only had a 40% chance. But now, I'd say it's at least 60%, if not higher, Lan Ning responded thoughtfully. Qing Feng nodded slightly, though his eyes still held a hint of astonishment. Lin Dong, with his 4th Nirvana stage strength, could hold a greater than 60% chance of victory against someone at the 5th Nirvana stage. Could this guy really be that terrifying? And besides, their other two battlefields are also holding the upper hand. Lan Ying's beautiful eyes shifted toward the distant battle between Little Mink and Little Yin. Her expression became more serious, especially when her gaze fell on Little Mink. That one called Lin Mink is also incredibly powerful. Judging from the surface, he might even be stronger than Lin Dong. Look at Song Ke. Ever since the fight started, he's been completely suppressed. As for that brute, Lin Yin, while he doesn't seem to have it as easy, his sheer ferocity is making Song Ba cautious. These three are no ordinary individuals. Hearing this, Qing Feng turned to observe and solemnly nodded. He no longer dared to underestimate them. Their strength was on par with the three demons of the Song clan. If Lin Dong and his companions could defeat the Song clan's three, it would mean they were qualified to stand on equal footing with them. Their names would surely be etched onto the Nirvana gold ranking. Clang, clang, clang. In the battlefield, the clash between spear and trident was swift and fierce, with sparks flying. Lin Dong and Song Zhen were both fully engaged, their movements impossibly fast and their attacks ruthless, each aimed at the other's vital points. A single hit would result in serious injury. Clang. Another vicious collision sent waves of violent energy rippling through the ground, causing massive cracks to form beneath their feet. Both fighters were sent retreating by the impact. Whoosh! As Lin Dong retreated, his expression suddenly turned cold. Majestic primordial energy surged out, transforming into 5 ancient giant fingers. Great Wilderness Celestial Prison Hand. With a cold glint in his eyes, Lin Dong let out a low cry. The 5 ancient fingers swiftly converged, forming a massive hand filled with an ancient aura. As the hand materialized, a phantom shadow appeared in the void. Having successfully formed the Great Wilderness Celestial Prison Hand, Lin Dong didn't stop there. Azure light surged from his body, rushing into the giant hand. Sizzle! The azure light infused the ancient hand, causing enormous azure dragon scales to appear across its surface. In the blink of an eye, the ancient hand transformed into a hand covered in azure scales. Boom! Without hesitation, Lin Dong's eyes turned icy cold as he grasped the air. The ancient hand, now fused with the power of the dragon, roared forward, tearing through the sky and descending upon Song Zhen like a thunderous slap. Boom! 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 As the azure-scaled hand descended, the ground beneath it shattered instantly. Those who were too close were blasted backward, coughing up blood as they flew away in a pitiful state. Seeing the massive hand rushing toward him, Song Zhen's expression became incredibly grim. From the hand, he could sense a palpable danger. Sizzle! Taotie demon armor. Thick black energy erupted wildly from Song Zhen's body, enveloping him and quickly condensing into a black suit of armor. The armor radiated black energy, and faint roars echoed from within. Boom! Just as the armor formed, the azure-scaled hand slammed down in front of countless watching eyes. Bang! With a deafening crash, the black armor on Song Zhen's body exploded with an intense black light, and his body was violently flung backward. The black energy gathered, transforming into countless black mouths that worked to dissipate the immense force. Haha! Even without my devouring power, you still can't kill me. Song Zhen finally stabilized his body a few feet above the ground, a savage grin stretching across his face as the black mouths continued to absorb the blow. Is that so? Lin Dong's lips curled into a smirk. His palms slammed heavily onto the ground. Boom! The ground beneath Song Zhen suddenly cracked open, and an overwhelming surge of black light shot out, transforming into a massive black mouth. The mouth seemed to hide a black hole within it, deep and unfathomable. What is this? Song Zhen's pupils contracted as he stared at the black mouth that had suddenly formed beneath him. Heaven-devouring maw? Lin Dong's eyes were cold as he clenched his hand. The black maw surged upward, and in Song Zhen's terrified gaze, it swallowed him whole. Now, you can taste my heaven-devouring maw, Lin Dong's icy voice echoed as darkness engulfed Song Zhen.